Good evening and welcome to the Redevelopment Agency meeting for Tuesday, September 10th, 2013. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present. First is approval of minutes. The minutes of the closed executive session of August 14th, 2012, work session of January 15th, 2013. Board Member Van Hoosier.
Yes, Chair Blair, these minutes are correct to the best of my recollection.
And the minutes of the special meeting of January 22nd, 2013, the joint study session of March 12th, 2013, the regular meeting of March 12th, 2013, and the regular meeting of April 9th, 2013. Board Member Wicks.
Thank you. I reviewed those, and they accurately reflect the content of those meetings.
Minutes of the joint study session of April 9th, 2013, the special meeting of April 16th, 2013, the closed executive session of April 16th, 2013, and the special meeting of May 7th, 2013. Board Member Gochner.
I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate.
Thank you. Minutes of the closed executive session of May 7th, 2013, the joint study session of May 14th, 2013, and the special meeting of May 16th, 2013. Board Member Heyer.
Yes, I have reviewed those and have not noticed any errors.
Thank you. And minutes of the regular meeting of May 14th, 2013, and the work session of May 16th, 2013. Board Member Stevens.
Yes, Mr. Chair, they're correct.
Thank you. And the minutes of the closed executive session of May 16th, 2013, and the special meeting of May 28th, 2013.
As Chair Blair, I've reviewed those minutes and found them to be accurate to the best of my ability. And I make a motion that we approve these minutes as proposed.
Second.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Garner to accept the minutes and a second from Board Member Heyer. This is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes. Next up is reports from administration.
We're going to start with Mr. Stratford and end with Mr. Montgomery, the dynamic duo. And there might be somebody in the middle, I don't know.
So my discussion will actually be really quite short. It's just to address the first question in your packet that has to do with kind of the highlights of the mixed-use master development agreement, mixed-use zone master development agreement. And when you look at the mixed-use statute, it requires that every single development have a development agreement that will incorporate certain and address certain issues. Primarily addresses things like building design and also open space, signage, and a number of items like that that will allow the city to know that the development is consistent with the master plan that has been adopted for that area. And so you have a very long document tonight that you're looking at, the mixed use master, I'm going to get it wrong myself, the MUMDA document that has all of that information in there and additional information. The highlights that I just wanted to point out is that, first of all, so that it's clear, this master development agreement doesn't just apply to phase one. Phase one is a relatively small area, about a half a block between Childs and Grant, and 400 or 500 feet from 20th Street to the north. This master development agreement actually applies to 17 acres, applies to all the land owned by 20th Street investors, which includes all of the land on the north side of the river between Grant and Kiesel, and pretty much all of the land, well, certainly all the land between Childs and Grant south of the river, as well as some additional property on the west side. So this development agreement applies to all of that land so that we make sure we get consistency in every single phase that comes before either the RDA or the administration as this project goes forward. The unique characteristic of this that allows it to address individual needs of individual phases is that there is an exhibit entitled Exhibit C, which is a building use plan that will be added to with each phase. So the guidelines, the big picture is all addressed in the agreement you're reviewing tonight, but as each phase comes in, there will be further review and additional exhibits that will be added on to make sure that those individual phases are in compliance with the bigger picture. The second item that you should be aware of is that one of the things that the agreement is required to include is certain deadlines. Well, the deadline in this document is in, I believe, 2028, which is quite a ways out there. But additional deadlines are addressed within a document that the RDA has already approved, which is the LTDA, the agreement between the RDA and the developer to do the joint development between those two entities. And so that agreement has a number of other deadlines in there that the developer has to comply with. And so that's why you don't see a lot of specific deadline dates in the mixed-use master development agreement. And finally, what this document really does is benefits both the city and the developer. It gives the developer certain vested rights to know how their applications are going to be reviewed so that they don't suddenly have the rules changed on them in the middle of the stream and have to completely change their plans. Also gives the city certainty to know that the developer is going to follow those big picture requirements. And so I think that actually covers pretty much what the MUMDA is designed to do. There's a lot of detail in there about how individual instances of open space will be addressed, how architectural detail will be addressed, and how we'll make sure that the people are complying with, or that this developer is complying with the master plan that was adopted for this area back in about 2000, well, whenever it was adopted. It's after 2010, I think. Any questions about that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark did so well, let him finish off, too. Mr. Chair, members of the board, so the consideration you have tonight before you is a recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding Phase 1. Phase 1 is basically the area between Childs and Grant, 20th and Park. The layout consists of an apartment mixed-use building that will be located here, commercial development on the main floor at the corner of Childs and 20th. Two different apartment buildings, one a 32-unit building here, one a 24-unit building here. Then a mixed-use, small mixed-use building located here that would have 4 retail spaces on the ground level and then units above it. There'll be 3 units above it. The 4th unit above the retail space would actually be a spa for this complex, and then the 3rd floor would be a great room and an outdoor patio area that people in these complexes could use for larger gatherings. And so that would occur in this building also. Then you'd have 6 townhomes that would be constructed in this area along Park Boulevard. So that is the makeup of this development. As you can see, the layout is such that the large mass of building that occurs along 20th Street, which reflects the mass of the building of the American Can. And I just wanted to show you how this building relates to then the development that occur around this.
Mr. Montgomery, can you move the mic over so that can be for recording?
We'll put it right there. This represents the American Can building where it sits. So you can see the length of that building continues on off the page. So here's where Childs is. This is where the Da Vinci Academy portion ends. So you can get a relationship of this building in relationship to what happened here. The proposed heights, this is 48 building with American Can. This is 47 feet here and 52 feet at the corner area. The townhomes that are being built along Grant are located here. This shows you then how these buildings relate to that. These buildings are 42 to 44 foot in height to the peak of the roof. This building would be 33 feet tall. Again, so you can see the proportions are being kept along this street and along this street. This building would be 40 feet tall. This building, 40 feet also. Again, remembering this is 42, so again, the corners are being relatively the same. And this drops down to 28 feet. So you have a lot of variations taking place in terms of the height of the buildings in this area. In the site development scheme, the proposed landscaping plan would be such that the inner parking lot would have an area of trees that would help divide the parking and help create some green space between the units here. Another green space amenity would be located in this area, which would be for the use of the units. And then at the end of the child's driveway would be a large arbor kind of entry feature, and the green space and sidewalks that come from either side and then lead to a space that goes through the project. As you can see, it's a tree-lined space. The sidewalks vary in texture and in sizes, with amenities being placed in these locations. Each corner on 20th Street and also the corner on Grant and Park would have a plaza area developed in the right-of-way to help define those entrances. And so the landscape plan indicates that those will have different pavement treatments to, again, accentuate the corners. And another green space will be proposed here between the apartment complex and these townhomes, which would have seating areas outside. As you look at this and compare it to the master plan in terms of percent of green space or square footage of green space, this project has more green space than the earlier plan, the master plan had shown. The master plan had indicated there'd be a small green area here surrounded by some cottage homes, and then a green space located here. Well, now you can see they've got these amenities, and then some of these corner plazas, which are on private property, that increase the green space that from what the master plan had indicated. Let me walk through. I need a roving. Let me walk through then what these buildings look like, because that is part of your consideration also in terms of this project. This is an overall kind of a bird's eye view of the development looking at Childs and 20th Street. So you can see the corner building, which is a landmark building, highest part of the project. And you're looking down 20th Street here, you're looking Childs here, and then the part of the green space. So you can see how the buildings then start to define the block area. Going further down the green space, then you see the 32-unit apartment building. And then if we go to Grant Avenue, the 24-unit apartment building, then how it relates to the mixed-use project here, the townhomes located here to create that streetscape along Park Boulevard. And then you can see how the larger apartment building along 20th Street is developed. And this then is looking at the corner of 20th and Grant to again get that idea of kind of mirroring the mass of the American Can building on 20th Street and then starting to break it up with smaller buildings that step down as you move towards the River Parkway. Building A, which will be this building along 20th Street, actually has two different designs to it to help break up the mass and make it feel like it is an urban development where it's developing piece by piece with the two different pieces of architecture. This corner piece on Childs and 20th is what we call the transitional modern. Has a storefront located here, so you see storefront windows along Childs Avenue. All of them along the street have awnings that hang out over the space. And then a clock tower that runs the height of the building. And then, as you see, then the building starts to step down, both in the material that's used here, and this is kind of a quartzite, kind of have a stone appearance to it, of a reddish stone that'll be done in block systems here, and then it steps down to EFS panels, or stucco is what most people would call an EFS panel in these areas. Every unit has an outdoor patio. On the ground level, those patios have an enclosure on them. The upper levels, the patios have railing. The other end of the building, as you can see how then it shifts in its design, takes on more of a what we call a loft mercantile style, where it's very rhythmic and repetitive in all its design. Brick base with 2 stories and then stucco base, and very simple cornice design. And again, the entrance then to this project would be off this entry feature located here. And again, you see some of the patio systems that occur on Building A. One of the things that the Planning Commission, I'll just show you these are just the elevation views themselves, but one of the things the Planning Commission talked about, and let me just zoom in on this, was how do you screen the parking lot that's shown let me go back. On Grand Avenue, in this location and this location, how do you screen that so that those people who are going up and down Grand Avenue don't look at a parking lot, but they look like it's an urban development? This drawing shows that proposal of how that takes place. The same brick that is used on the building is also used as a wall that extends along where the parking area is, so that it looks like an arm of the building is reaching out. There would actually be an entrance here that goes to the parking lot, so sidewalk from inside here would allow access out to the street, and there's also one that happens over here. You'll see that same treatment on the next building, which is, again, along Grand Avenue.
How tall is that brick wall going to be?
My estimates on that is probably about 6 foot, just looking at the proportions of how things are. I don't have a real dimension yet on that, but you want it tall enough so that even the pedestrian cannot see the cars. And especially when you're driving, you won't see them.
So that doesn't look very pedestrian friendly.
Well, you get some landscaping in front of it too.
Okay.
So there is a 10-foot landscape area between that.
Okay. That.
Yeah, so this is just the pure architectural drawing at that point. If we, I think, go back to the site plan area, you would have some areas, whoop, back along in here that would separate that out. And we also talked about maybe doing some even variations back and forth with that, just so it gets that comfortable feel to it. So the next building along Grand Avenue, and this is what they call Building B1, is, whoop, let me go back out now, is this 3-story building. And again, you can see, whoop, in a minute you can see how they use the wall to then help define the project, screen the parking, but then the pedestrian access through here, but how it's the same material along the building. And so this would be the 30-foot building that's located along Grand Avenue. Again, brick is the base. I haven't had a good chance to talk with Soren about this building versus the one the Planning Commission had. This is what we received just recently, today, which has a little different variation from what the Planning Commission looked at and how this roof line is treated. And I think the developer may want to correspond to that. Let me show you what's in your packet so you can see the difference between these two buildings. Oop. This is the building that's in your packet. So you can see how the cornice work is treated differently. And so there's been that revision made to it. The next building then, as we progress down Grand Avenue, would be the mixed use, the small mixed use building. This is, again, that building, how it looked. And as I mentioned, on the 3rd floor, you have this great room and then this outdoor deck on the corner of Grant and Park being located there. Again, that wall screening the parking and then leads to an outdoor patio in here. The thought being this may be a cafe or something on the ground floor, again, a commercial space. The front of that building then gives you an idea on Park Boulevard. Again, a brick building. This is kind of a loft mercantile design again. And they've revised this drawing to meet the conditions of the Planning Commission established. So in your package, you have a different drawing that shows some various different materials up in this area. They've refined that now to address what the Planning Commission had talked about. They also revised it to create the base along the bottom of this building on the back area that the Planning Commission recommended. So this drawing actually is showing what the Planning Commission had recommended to you, but not what the Planning Commission saw. They've added the Planning Commission comments now into this drawing. As we then go along Park Boulevard, we come to the the townhomes. And again, this is different from your drawing in your packet. They have added this building being all brick now, which your packet doesn't show. And then they've taken these buildings and removed the half brick that was shown on here and made this all stucco. They have still left a portion brick here so it can wrap around the edges in this area. I'm not sure, I think this still needs to be refined somewhat. I think there's still some questions about this, but if we take the Planning Commission's recommendation that is made to you tonight, knowing that this may be revised somewhat still, the intent, you can see what's taking place here in creating that townhome feel of a kind of Victorian townhome row house in that area. All the units, you step up off the street into the unit, and so that creates that kind of row house feel. The last building then is the building that we call the B building, which would be on Childs Avenue, or the vacated Childs Parkway now. This is a 4-story building. Again, a motif of the kind of the mission style up on top, which duplicates some of the old apartments in Ogden. The brick being stepped up from 1 story to 2 stories to 3 stories in the center, and some design work on the parapets to, again, address what the Planning Commission had asked. The Planning Commission also asked that the window details be revised to reflect an arts and craft building, and these drawings show that correction, where there are 6/1 windows, where before they were kind of an casement window that opened out this way. Now these have been revised to be a 6/1 window, which would be more in keeping with the architecture, which is one of the requirements the Planning Commission has asked you to consider in your approval. That is a tour of the buildings. Now, a couple of issues that the Planning Commission had also placed in their recommendations to you dealt with a couple items. First one was that on Childs Avenue, one of the recommendations was that the sidewalk be increased to 10 feet in width. This is a revised drawing now showing that 10-foot width. When the Planning Commission looked at this, the issue was, from the drawings we had at that time, going from 4 foot, which is the drawings the Planning Commission saw, to 10 foot, having the parallel parking along the east side, only left 21 feet from the parking stall to the west curb line of Childs. The concern at that point was that general standards are we have 24-foot access for two-way traffic. And by nature, people would want to come out of this area also and not just be limited to the grant access. And so people would try to use this as two-way anyway. The Planning Commission recommended that given that limitation, that they felt that this should be a two-way street with a restriction of no parking along the west side, and then a right turn only sign here. Since the Planning Commission's action, Great Basin has done better calculations of after they've done the surveys and everything of what is out there. They actually now show that there's 24.8 feet from the parking stall to this curb line, which would meet our general standard of 24 feet without any exceptions or without any variations needed. So this now is such that it would meet our two-way access without any special consideration. And so this revision, I think, helps the situation. And this was the reason Commissioner Scatty voted no in his recommendation to you. He felt all the rest of the project was fine and worked well, but he wanted to make sure this was wide enough to meet our standards rather than an exception. Now this does meet that standard. The other discussion I left it in the other packet, was the cross-section of Park Boulevard. Any pictures? Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. This is the revised cross-section of Park Boulevard now, as they've looked at the design of this, that accommodates a 72-foot right-of-way, which is 9.5 feet of sidewalk on each side, parallel parking along the south side of Park, angle parking on the north side of Park, and then enlarging the cul-de-sac to meet the 40-foot radius the fire department required. The one item I want to point out here, that in the Planning Commission's recommendation, early on, as this was proposed to have angle parking on both sides, and then for, again, reasons to meet the parking requirement and other things, everything shifted to the north. The islands here were concerned with the engineering department, and they felt that these should be flushed to help out with snow removal. This revised design is what engineering has been working with Great Basin to show the bulb outs actually being a standard curb, eliminate a parking stall here to have an area for stacking, and so people don't back out into the crosswalk, and then an island on this side. They have then revised their recommendation and felt that these are now appropriate. So the Plan Commission's recommendation says that these should be flush. Engineering has now revised and said these can be a standard curb design. And so that's a variation that you have now that the Planning Commission didn't have. And I think that is item 10, or I can't remember which one. Let's see. Yeah, item 10 on the recommendations. So that's a change that would recommend from what the Planning Commission had recommended to you. As the Planning Commission reviewed then this layout, these designs, they felt that this is consistent both with the MU ordinance and the MU design guidelines, and their recommendation is approval subject to those conditions that have been forwarded to you in the memo. Questions of me?
In our work session, you illustrated the timetable of construction.
Yes.
Do you want to review that with
Okay.
us?
Let's see. Just pull this out. So this is what they have submitted right now as far as their best projection. They would look to start with the Park Boulevard to start work as soon as they can on October 1st, so that they show, and have it completed by the mid-November. At the same time, when you get to about mid-November, they'd be looking then as doing some of the site excavation work, rough grading, and then get all the underground utilities under construction. So through January, February, March, that could take place. At the same time, they see building B1 beginning its construction, going vertical, about early part of February. B1 starting about March 7th. Building D, which is the corner of Grant and Park, about April 1st. Building A, April 22nd. And then the townhomes sometime in the late May. And then you can see kind of completion dates of those, what they're looking at. I know in talking with the developers, since they gave me this, there may be some switches, such as they may start with B1 first and do B1 and D, and then work their way towards B. And then the townhomes may come a bit later, so that they're starting more in this scenario while this gets all developed, so that the townhomes can be done after the project is there to help better sell these, that it's not all during construction time, that they can see what they're going to be building next to. So there may be some modifications, but this is the general timeline there. They're basically trying to get going as soon as they can, get Park in before Thanksgiving, and then start the grading and the excavation work about that same time, and go through November, December with that work.
So were all these revisions met, 1 through 20?
Not all of them have been met.
Working on them.
They're still working on that, but these exhibits I've given you are an update from what the Planning Commission said. It shows you they've been trying to implement those. So most of them are being there. There's still a couple of tweaks we got to make. But these will become the exhibits that go into C Exhibit C, these drawings. So I think it'd be appropriate that we would incorporate these new drawings into the Exhibit C, but the conditions are all, other than condition 10, still in place so the direction can be reached of final details of what needs to happen.
So the revisions would be minor, not a major
Yes, there would be. Maybe a question of where some brick takes place on the townhomes, just how to work around that wrapping scenario on the two end units. Still some simplification in some of the designs, but not a great change from what I present to you tonight. Oh, I did forget one thing. In the Planning Commission's recommendation to you, they had talked about, in Building A, planter design taking place along the ground level patio wall to help soften what takes place along 20th Street. So in that wall section of the patio, that there would be a small wall, and then the recommendation of the Planning Commission is then to have a planter into that wall so that there can be vegetation there, so in the summer there can be color and help create that feeling along 20th Street of softness. In the drawing you had tonight that I showed you, this is their comeback to that recommendation from the Planning Commission. In the modern unit, small planter built into the center part, and then the brick unit just on the corner posts, or the center post, putting a planter in there. So that's an item for consideration. I'll let the developer explain why they're looking at this option versus what the Planning Commission's recommendation was.
Which would have been along the whole
Yeah.
top part.
Well, the way the Planning Commission worded it was along the whole top, or at least a rhythmatic pattern that's enough to show what's taking place.
That looks no different than a planter that you'd plunk on top of the wall.
Do you have any other questions of me?
How does that one get sorted out?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion tonight. The recommendation from the Planning Commission is one way, and this is the revision since that recommendation from the Planning Commission. So I think it's an item of discussion that you have.
You have the picture, Greg, of the example I gave you?
No, I knew you were going to ask me. I looked through here. I thought, what did I do with it? Didn't see it in my pile here.
Want me to send it to everyone quickly?
So again, what was the intent of the planters?
Was to try to soften the wall along 20th Street. So as people are walking the sidewalk, there's a softening. And, as the Planning Commission talked about it, it may be that this wall could even be reduced in height somewhat, and then the planters could create the other edge, but it'd be a softer edge than the brick wall of this height.
So the example you're showing us, what is the width of that, roughly? I mean, I'm not going to hold you to it.
It's 9 feet long. So this space is 9 feet.
I mean, sorry, the planter. What's the width of the planter thing?
Well, other than just using the illustration and brick modules, I'd say it's probably 1.5 feet.
I mean, just with the heat we have, 1.5 feet isn't going to, I mean, it's not going to be able to, there's not enough in there to retain moisture or
You're going to have
to grow
plants
anything.
die. I mean, it's going to cook them because you're not going to have the mass to help
But
keep
wouldn't
the
you
roots cool.
suppose people would want to put their own plantings and things outside? If that window isn't flush to the, I mean, there's a landing
It's
there,
recessed,
isn't it? Yeah, it's recessed. I mean, wouldn't there be,
And Greg, with what Susie's saying, isn't it that it'll be a planter box, so then that would allow the resident to plant their own plants? And
kind of,
Those would be part of what the restrictions are to the apartment complex.
yeah. are there
Whether
gonna be
they do it a
restrictions?
uniform or whether they let individuals do it. I'm not sure how they'd establish their rules in the apartment.
I just sent the example that I
I mean, I don't think we want
across.
clotheslines out there, but I do think
No.
we would love to see something that's a little, chairs or something to indicate that this is my living space and it's outdoor living space.
So those examples, those are two extremes. I mean, we have,
Yeah.
they're completely,
Well, and with the one I sent, one of the aspects I liked about it was with the taller walls, they had a planter at the bottom too to kind of soften that so you don't have that big mass of stucco or brick. You know, it softens it. And kind of carried that theme on, but it was just an example. But I liked the amount of mass with the planter material.
Yeah.
Because with those little planters, you're not going to be able to keep anything alive. You're going to have a bunch of dead
Who's
plants.
going to be responsible to keep them alive?
Yeah, it's just going to be a bunch of dead plants. And I think with this, it's, you know, they put perennial, with the example that I sent to everyone, there's perennials, so that it's something that comes back year after year and looks nice.
I think it has more of an impact if you have a greater amount of foliage than just individual aspects of it. Constant.
So can we make that center planter piece wider? Can we increase the size of that?
Well, I think that's the discussion. I think it'd be appropriate to hear from the developer about why they came up with the design they did, and then kind of make your determination on that item. No other questions of me at this point? Or?
Just clarifying, this will be the last time that this MUMDA comes to us, right?
This phase, yes.
This phase, right? Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Soren Halliday, and I work with PEG Development. We're at 180 North University Avenue. So we did like the idea that you presented to us, and when Greg first mentioned it to us, it's a great idea. It's a great look. I like the feel of that, and we agree that there does need to be some type of softer transition from the sidewalk to the unit. Yeah, that'd be great. That's okay. I'm just looking at it here. The challenge that we've had with those, the thoughts that we've had as a design group, and again, we're willing to work on this. We're not closed off. The challenge we had in our experience that we've had with those types of planters is it's a cost and a maintenance type of challenge, where you have to actually put in a water pan and you have to sprinkler it to keep them going during the summer, and so that becomes a cost maintenance type of situation. This design that we have here, although it looks rather weak to a certain extent, is an attempt to show that we can do something. Maybe there's a minimal, there's an aspect between what a homeowner or the resident, not the homeowner, but the tenant could do, and with their unit, and what the developer, what the owner, what we would do and what we would have. So I think the transition here is we were trying to say something. We wouldn't go as big, but we're willing to go smaller in that sense, is we're just trying to figure it out and try to figure out that design and what works. So we're concerned about going the full kind of planter box style, just with the cost and with the maintenance and with that issue. But we do want to meet that. We do think is a good idea that there could be something else that we could do that would work. Because if there is some type of maintenance, you know, you have those summer and you have those spring flowers where that are very colorful and they kind of fold over the wall, where you have those hanging baskets, those type of flowers where they have those the pansies or whatever they have that kind of grow and they end up kind of enveloping the wall. I think that's a great look. That's a great thing. But those obviously aren't perennials, but those would be a really nice, colorful addition to the side. So I think we're still trying to figure out what we can do and what will make it look good. But that being said, we're not set with this design. So.
Yeah, I think if you put, water-wise perennials and put in the correct sprinkler system, there's minimal maintenance, there's minimal upkeep costs. You shear them at the end of the season and they come up in the spring, and that's it. It's not like you're having to buy them every year. It's not like you're having to plant them every year. And I think it would just end up looking better versus having a bunch of pots that may or may not survive with a bunch of different annual type flowers that are kind of a hodgepodge of whatever ends up being put in there. I think long term, if you put perennials in, it's going to look better.
If I were a tenant of one of these units, it looks like a great amenity to have for like a little herb garden or something like that they might have some say as to what went in there.
And we do see that on a lot of our properties, especially on the first level. I mean, sometimes tenants try to get away with planting items out in the yard, out in the green space outside of their unit. Sometimes you'll walk up and you see some different kinds of flowers in the different areas that actually look pretty good, but aren't necessarily consistent with what our landscape plan was.
Well, yeah, that's
so you do have to kind of control it.
They may go down to, some home center and buy some of those green plastic deals, and those wouldn't look good.
Right.
Yeah.
They're just not. So definitely you would have to have some type of regulation as far as what you'd have to put on there. I do agree. But I think that is a good idea. A truth aspect is this resident might like a different type of color outside, which would give them a different feel, and this resident might like a different item as well, so.
Just think, you can always put other additional planters on your own patio. If you want an herb garden, it doesn't need to be up. I like the idea of having something that kind of softens the lines and creates some screening. It helps create some privacy too.
I think it adds interest too if you have that.
So I'm not quite clear on how we're supposed to resolve this tonight, but it sounds like you're maybe saying this is a little bit of a weak design, and is there a better solution?
I recognize that this isn't the one and only design that could happen. I think this was one thing that in trying to meet in the short time frame, trying to meet the Planning Commission's thought and trying to come back and say, well, you have your proposal and here's another idea that we can look at. Maybe there's some way we can develop this a little bit better, but maybe not go all the way out. Again, we are always looking to meet the budget of the developer and the owner, and so we're just trying to figure out how the best way to do that.
One thing we do have an advantage, we've got Greg as a landscape engineer, and he's a pretty bright guy. I'm pretty comfortable leaving some of those things as he our liaison to work out some of those issues with the developer.
I guess I am too, as long as are we in agreement that maybe this is a little weak? And
yeah, we can definitely, with that that idea, definitely work with Greg on developing it.
I do think that Greg understands what our concerns are, and that we do want to soften it up. We want to make it a little green, make it
a little more green.
we want to make it, almost so it's friendly and not just brick and mortar.
Well, and it creates some screening. The example that I sent to everybody kind of creates, and I don't know if you know where that example is. It's in Salt Lake on 21st South and just above 13th East. It's a new mixed-use development next to, just west of the Dodo restaurant. But, part of the appeal, I think, is that it kind of creates some screening for those patios too, and some privacy from the street, but it's not just a big brick wall. Mm-hmm. And I think the strength in that was kind of the mass effect of having the planters with the material in there instead of just small planters placed along the walls in certain places.
So Greg, are you comfortable with working through that, or do we need to make some other sort of direction?
No, I'm comfortable with that. I know what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We will now receive public input on this, on the mixed-use master development agreement. Seeing none, we'll ask if there's any other further discussion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2013-16.
I second it.
We have a motion from Board Member Gogner to adopt proposed resolution 2013-16 and a second from Board Member Stevens. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Board Member Van Hoosier?
Aye.
Board Member Wicks?
Aye.
Board Member Gochner?
Aye.
Board Member Heyer?
Aye.
Vice Chair Garner?
Aye.
Chair Blair?
Aye, that passes. Next is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the board regarding your concerns or ideas for the Ogden Redevelopment Agency. City council concerns should be expressed during a city council meeting. Please state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing none, comments from administration
None tonight, thank you.
and comments from other board members.
I guess I just want to make one comment. I think there's been a lot of collaboration and adjusting, and I'm really happy with the product. So thank you all.
I'd like to echo that also, the amount of hours that you've put into this, and it's obvious you've really cared for this project, and you have some heart into this. It's really exciting for me. I've lived in Ogden all my life, and this is a pretty exciting project that's coming forward. Really excited to see its fruition.
I don't think I've ever seen such quick turnaround time for various iterations of things, so that's pretty impressive.
The nice thing is that we're developing that project, and that's starting to take feet.
We appreciate, like Amy said, your dedication to address our issues and bring them forth quickly, and that's very impressive. Thank you.
And especially a quality project that Ogden deserves.
And it's important to us. This project is very important to not only the community, but also the center part of our business district, so.
Next is consideration of adjourning into a closed executive session. Mr. Williams.
Mr. Chair, a closed executive session is permissible for the purposes set forth in the agenda.
With that, I would make a motion that we adjourn into a closed executive session.
Second.
We have a motion from from Board Member Wicks to adjourn into a closed executive session and a second from Vice Chair Garner. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Van Hoosier?
Aye.
Board Member Wicks?
Aye.
Board Member Gochner?
Aye.
Board Member Heyer?
Aye.
Board Member Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair Garner?
Aye.
Chair Blair?
Aye, that passes. And we will adjourn from that